Welcome to the Contrarians. Tonight we are going to take a look at the best 7 album runs from a band or an artist. The panel's here. We're ready to go. Let's get started. Welcome to the Contrarians. Tonight I have a panel, and what a great panel it is. Our topic for night: what is the best 7 album run from a classic rock band? Now, we could use that term loosely. What's your definition of classic rock band? I'm sure everybody has their own terms and different definitions, but we're going to talk about at least 3 choices of a great 7 album run by a band or artist. So tonight I want to welcome Bill Schuster, Jeff, and I welcome the Parish of Rock here tonight, and we are going to tackle this. So I think I'm just going to go as I see it. I'm going to go Bill, Jeff, Parish, and we're just going to keep going around like that. Welcome, panel. Nice to see everybody tonight. How are you? You ready to talk some? You ready to talk some classic rock?
Oh yeah.
All right, Bill. Welcome. What's your first choice?
All right. Yeah. When I thought of this idea, this was my topic, by the way.
It's very good. That's what. Good. You're going first. I like that.
Convenient.
It's convenient.
I'm always pretty open about people's interpretations of whatever topic idea I throw out there, but my general idea was I was mostly trying to avoid big obvious stuff like, I could do Beatles, Floyd, Zeppelin, Queen, that kind of stuff all day long. Some people might agree with some of those having classic runs, but basically I was trying to pick 7 album runs that kind of encapsulate an artist. That if you have this 7 album run, that might be all you need. That's if you could just throw somebody those 7 albums and here you go, you're good. Not saying there was nothing else in their catalog that was ever any good, but they just fit together almost like a box set. And there were 2 bands in particular that I thought of. So if we hit a third one, I'm going to be winging it. So
it's all right. We'll see. We'll go an hour and see how it goes. So
all right. My first one then, one of the 2 bands that I thought of was this band, the Moody Blues. And I'm talking about Days of Future Past in 67 up through Seven Sojourn in 72. I think most hardcore Moody Blues fans would consider that their classic 7 albums. Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard it said that way so many times that I see these albums as a package, and you can see there's not a great deal of evolution in the band over this time, but there is a certain amount. And obviously Days of Future Past is its own entity, kind of where they all came together. Justin Hayward and John Lodge joined the band, and it became something different than it used to be. And after that, pretty much the next 6, they kind of found their sound. They got rid of the orchestra, and Mike Pender was able to use the Mellotron to make up for a lot of those sounds. And those next 6 albums really took the best of Days of Future Past and created something that is very time-locked and unique. Some people think, being time-locked is a bad thing. I don't. I think it's cool because this is totally a time machine to 67 to 72 for the better and the worse. These, the sounds are very much of that time, the Mellotron in particular. The lyrics are about as hippy-dippy as you can get, also for better and for worse. But it's a lot of fun if you could put yourself in that mindset. It's great. I could absolutely see how people, say my kids' age, in their 20s or less, would probably think this is absolutely ridiculous and absolutely old people music. But for me, as a hard rock kid growing up, as a teenager in the 80s, I looked back on this as my classic rock. That was the stuff that was getting played on the rock stations then. You wouldn't hear the Moody Blues on any classic rock station now. I wouldn't think any of this stuff for the most part. So,
not anymore. I haven't heard anything on classic rock. Of course, that whole term classic rock's kind of morphed. At least the station here, when you play stuff. I mean, now you're hearing a lot of hair metal on it. That's now classic rock more than, anything. And Moody Blues, that's regulated or put off for like the Sunday morning,
That's almost
classic
easy
show
list.
in the morning or something. So everything's morphed. But I have to admit that 7 album run, that's a good run for the Moody Blues. Those are all good, strong albums. All right, cool. Bill, awesome. Excellent. Jeff, let's throw it over to you. And welcome, Nick. Nice to see you. Better late than never. So we're just going to go around, try to do 3 picks if we can. We're just going to go an hour, and then you'll go after Jeff and Parrish, and then we'll go to you. All right, Jeff, welcome to the show. What's your first pick?
All right. I did not catch the memo on the box set encapsulation thing, but I think that's really cool. By the way, this is Bear. He's a little insistent. So I'm going to throw out first one that doesn't fit that really. J.J. Cale, from the beginning through up through Grasshopper, from Naturally to Grasshopper is where that ends at 1982. But I don't think I've heard a J.J. Cale album that I didn't like most of them. And there are great songs on every one of those albums that I've heard. And what he doesn't really do, in contrast to some other bands, I'll pick on Motorhead a little bit. I love Motorhead, but there are duff tracks on every Motorhead album. I think even Ace of Spades has a couple I don't like, but there are great tracks on every one. J.J. Cale, there are great tracks, and then it drops down in quality to, well, this is pretty okay. Yeah, I wouldn't turn this off. And that's actually, I think that's a hell of an accomplishment. That's pretty good. So that's my pick is J.J. Cale. There's no reason to stop at Grasshopper. The box set is everything he did, as far as I can tell. I think he's really one of the most underrated and best artists. And I like the fact that he's got that kind of understated approach to things, and it's cool, but in a way that you have to be kind of paying a little bit of attention. He's not the guy doing something flashy to get your attention. He's just being J.J. Cale, and either you get it or you don't. And if you don't get it, then it's probably boring. And if you do get it, it's like, wow, this is amazing. This is actually a lot better than a lot of stuff that got played a lot more better. Could you maybe not?
The cat will do what the cat does.
Yeah, he does. Anyway, there's a desk right here, and he likes to sit. He's been up here this entire time. Anyway, sorry about distraction.
That's all right.
But that's my pick.
Awesome. J.J. Cale. No one talks about J.J. Cale. So, yeah, great pick, Jeff. All right. And that's one artist I really never ventured down.
Actually, something I forgot to mention was that I haven't really heard a lot of early Moody Blues. I had Long Distance Voyager, and I loved that. And I heard a few things on the radio, but I've never really gotten into the whole records. But Bill, you kind of reminded me, well, that band existed, and they were pretty good. Maybe I should give them a shot. It's more of a shot, because I haven't listened to that stuff since high school. Really. Yeah. So anyway, I kind of like to credit people when they mention something, and I think, hey, I should check that out, because then we're doing what we came here to do, right?
Right. Or we're just trying to turn people on. Heck, just turning each other on to different stuff. So that's all it's about. All right.
Okay.
Awesome, Jeff. Good pick. All right, let's throw it over to Parrish of Rock. Parrish, what's your first pick?
Okay, well, I suppose I set myself some rules for this, as always. So 7 album runs doesn't include live albums, and doesn't include any greatest hits or anything like this. So there's new studio albums. So, and my first one was going to be Queen, but on the basis we're going to do more of slightly less obvious ones, I'm going to.
Well, you can do whatever you want. I'm just trying to think, did Queen have a good 7 album run?
Okay, well, I'll do Queen then. So my first one is Queen, starting with their debut in 73, all the way up to Jazz in 78. So that's
I would agree.
Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, Night at the Opera, Day at the Races, News of the World, and then Jazz. So they're the 7. My jumping on point for Queen was Sheer Heart Attack. And I have to say, initially, I didn't like Queen or Queen 2. In fact, I didn't really listen to them or like them until after Freddie died in the early 90s. And then I went back and revisited. But I think that is for me is probably the best 7 run of any band. And then you just look at some of the tracks on those they're an absolute classic. So you got Keep Yourself Alive on the first album, Tie Your Mother Down, and Seven Seeds of Ryan, the second one, Killer Queen, Now I'm Here, Stone Cold Crazy and Sheer Heart Attack. Obviously Bohemian Rhapsody on Night of the Opera, but also My Best Friend and I'm in Love with the Car. Day at the Races, you've got Tie Your Mother Down, Somebody to Love. News of the World, you've got We Will Rock You and Champions, but then you've got Sheer Heart Attack, the song, and Spread Your Wings. And then Jazz, which is the one most people actually kind of play down, but I think it's a great album. You've got songs like Don't Stop Me Now, Jealousy, Bicycle Race, Fat Bottom Girls. And I think they were all produced by Roy Thomas Baker. Now, I might be wrong, but I think
For the most
they were.
part, but
Yeah.
not News of the World or The Day. Those are Mike Stone. But, Mike Stone was...
he engineered and produced it, but it was still at I think they were still at Roy Thomas Baker's studio, so it's a bit... But anyway, it's kind of... So you've got a similar sound because of that commonality, I think, across the 7 albums. But actually, I think you've got real progression on those albums as well, from the first through to Jazz. But I don't think you've got a bad album amongst any of them. I think they're all really good. In fact, I think not only are they a classic rock band, I would suggest they're also all classic albums as well. So that's my first pick.
That's a good pick. And you picked, and I'm giving you the stamp of approval because you didn't include the game, for God's sake. So there you go.
No. Well, luckily, it ran out just before that.
It did. The cracks were forming.
If it'd been 8 in a row, I would have been stumped.
That's right. All right, cool. Let's throw it over to Nick Esquire. Nick, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing great, Grant. Thanks. First pick, it's an artist that I think has actually 2 runs of 7. He had a recording career and released a bunch of albums, and there was a decided break. And then the last 25, almost 30 years, he's had another good run. And people have heard me mention him on the Contrarians many times, but I'll go with Ian Hunter.
Oh.
And starts with this album through that guy right there, which is probably just a 7. Oh, by the way, my criterion is this. The album has to be at least a 7 out of 10 or above. No greatest hits, no live albums, no other wacky offshoots. So as far as like studio albums go. So if it's less than a 7, I consider that sort of a flawed album. So it's got to be 7 or above. But I think Ian's are all 7s and higher. And then he goes away for a bit, then comes back, starts recording with Dirty Laundry. That's a great album. And although I don't have it in front of me, I've got Defiance 2, which I can't speak to yet, but Defiance 1 is definitely good enough. I think I rated it a 7 or 8 when we did our little ranking thing, but has had another solid run. You can't go wrong with Ian Hunter. So he's got a couple 8s in there, maybe even a couple 9s. No 10s for me with Ian, but certainly 7s all the way through. Solid, consistent, and you can't ask for better.
Yeah, I would agree. Is that a different cover on the Defiance? I thought it was yellow. Am I getting it?
Well, this is the second one. This is the new one.
Oh, I missed that. That just came out recently?
Yeah, exactly. I can't really speak to this one yet. I've only heard it a bit, but let's just pretend this is Defiance 1.
Okay.
But
I think it's better than the first one, Nick.
From what I've gathered, it sounds that way. Plus, any album with Lucinda is going to get a bump up for me, Lucinda Williams. So I'm happy about it. And he took my advice. He got Brian May, and he got Morgan Fisher. So all he needed was Luther, and he would have connected all my dots, and maybe Paul Stanley. But he at least listened to what I had to say.
Golly, when Ian Hunter's listening to Nick Esquire, we're in good shape, or maybe not, or bad shape. I don't know. That's funny.
Yeah, right.
Cool. All right, great pick. Let's throw it over to Bill Schuster. Bill, what's your next one?
All right. The other one that kind of inspired this, and I would rank this one higher for me personally than my Moody Blues pick. They had a couple of comeback albums in the 2000s. One of them gave them a belated Grammy for Album of the Year, but it was nowhere near the best of their work. Some of you might see where I'm going with this. Steely Dan. Can't Buy a Thrill Through Gaucho, to me, is virtually a perfect, almost unmatched 7-album run. You can see the evolution of these guys from the full band that they were on Can't Buy a Thrill until bit by bit, starting especially with Katie Lyde, they started really losing members and bringing in more and more studio pros. And by the time Asia and Gaucho came along, they were fully a Walter Becker, Donald Fagen studio project with some of the best musicians available. And yet it was still excellent music. I tend to prefer the earlier stuff where they were a full-on band. But really, if you have these 7 albums, I mean, yeah, the hardcore people like me, they're gonna want the later stuff too, in addition to Walter and Don's solo stuff. But really, those 7 are all you need. If not, you can get the box set also, which also gives you a couple of tracks that aren't on the albums that are kind of necessary, like Here at the Western World, which was on their first Greatest Hits album, and FM, which was the title track from the FM movie soundtrack.
Yeah, and the version on FM on there's the really long version. So
yeah,
with the sax solo and all that's great. But yeah, the box set you can get it has everything that you would need, and it's
in chronological order even. So
yeah,
I mean, you just put it on from start to finish, and you can watch or listen to their evolution. And it's really cool to do it chronologically because you can really hear the things that they're learning as they go along and how they evolved from that full band into the studio project and the perfectionism.
Yeah.
At the right time, much like Zeppelin did, and right around the same time Zeppelin did, and kind of like the Beatles a decade earlier. It's like these bands did not go on too long. For whatever reason, they all stopped at the right spot. And I think that helped all of them become legendary. And so, yeah. Steely Dan, that's we'll see what I come up with if we come around for a third round, but Steely Dan was definitely the number 1 pick there.
Yeah, looks like we'll probably be able to squeeze a third one. All right, cool. Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Jeff, let's go with you. What's your next one?
All right, next one's a little more obvious. I'm going to go with ZZ Top from the first album up through El Loco, which is actually my favorite ZZ Top album. Probably because it's the one that I had first. And it's just weird. And I really like it. It's a little bit like the JJ Cale in that they also, there's a certain cool that they put into their music. It's powerful, but it's not, it doesn't scream at you, but they're a little more obvious about Cale's. And I think the one thing to avoid is that ZZ Top 6-pack, which will get you 6 of the 7, which has re-recorded drums and terrible. Just
Bad.
Horrible stuff. Because the drums were fine. I don't know why they thought they needed to change that.
Artist revision hit. Billy wanted to go back and make it more modern. Oh God, horrible thing. But they did fix that with that later box, with like the LP sleeves, which are all the original mixes, and that always gets high praise for sound quality. Like on Steve Hoffman's site for a CD, those sound really great. So,
oh, that's good. I haven't seen that, but I already had all the albums by that point. I think I did actually have the 6-pack for a while, but something seemed off, and I hadn't heard some of those earlier albums. Just on the radio. That was about it. But once I went in and got to the older stuff, like, oh, yeah, this is dusty and crunchy and just the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Sounds like the desert. All right.
A lot of that stuff, like on CD, when they first were initially released on CDs, a lot of those were remixes too. The Guello, I don't think was, but a lot of those earlier ones were all remixed, and until they put that CD box set out, which is not very much. You can pick it up still in print. That was like the first time the original mixes were out on CD. So there you know, I don't know why. I just don't know why it was remixed, because all that stuff sounds fine. It's always well recorded. All that ZZ Top. Because think about it. They're dead simple, you know, and I don't know why they needed remixed, but someone didn't like it. Probably Billy. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, don't mess with perfection, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I think a lot of that catalog just speaks for itself.
Yeah. I think so. All good records. But my favorite's DeGuello, and you didn't include that one. That I think was the best record, but I could be wrong.
Well, there's good stuff on all of them.
Yeah.
Those two ones that I'm not that into, they're still pretty okay, you know.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a 4 or 5 star song, they don't put a lot of 1 and 2 star crap on their albums,
No.
which is kind of cool.
All right, cool. ZZ Top, good choice. All right, let's throw over to the Parish of Rock. Parish.
Okay, well, I'm going to run with a bit of a theme from my first one to the second one. This is a more modern band. They've actually only released 7 albums, but you could argue that they're the son of Queen, both metaphorically and actually. And it's The Darkness.
Yes.
And I say actually son of Queen because Roger Taylor's son, Rufus Tiger Taylor, is the drummer in The Darkness, and at least has been since 2015. So not only is there a sound that is similar, an influence, if you like, but there's also a family member. And it runs through all of the albums. So starting with Permission to Land in 2003, through One Way Ticket to Hell and Back. Then they split and they came back with Hotcakes, which is probably the weakest of all of the albums, I think, but it's still a good album. Last of Our Kind, which is my favourite album by them, is really good. Pinewood Smiles is good. Easter is Cancelled was
great.
Is a brilliant album and came out just before COVID. So it's almost forecasting what was going to happen to the world, I think. And then the last album, Motorheart, I thought was really good as well. So, yeah, seven albums today. I think all of them are really good. Sticking with Nick's comment about 7 out of 10 or better, then all of those I would class at least a 7. Most of them an 8 or a 9. And in the case of Permission to Land and Last of Our Kind, I would say is a 10 out of 10 for me. So a fantastic run of albums, I think.
Yeah, I love The Darkness. Of course, we've talked about that before, Parish. So
we have, yes.
We have. So thank God you mentioned that. That's good. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Do you have what was the hot leg? Do you have that?
I do, yeah. I've got that, and also Stone Gods as well.
Got the Stone Gods. I've got both, but that Hot Leg record is like a long lost Darkness album, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it is a Darkness album, really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it is, but I love that one. It's a great record. Great record. Oh, and yeah, it's all good. You know, I have nothing against the catalog. All right, cool. Love it. All right, Parish, let's throw it over to Nick. Nick, what's your second?
Another artist that I've talked about in the Contrarians. This one's kind of obvious for if you've heard me talk before, but 11 studio albums, a couple 7s, a bunch of 8s, a bunch of 9s, and maybe 2 10s. My criteria for 10s, I was thinking about this project. I probably have had to live with an album for at least 10 years to consider it a 10. It's got to be an album that I come back to over time. It can't just be something that I heard in the last 6 months to a year and I really, really like it. A 10 has got to stand the test of time. 10s for me are like Desolation Boulevard, Lights Out, that kind of thing. Things that I just think Back in Black, Highway to Hell. Those are 10s for me.
So I don't want to interrupt, but this is like a show in itself. So would you consider these records? This is how we get these shows. They just come off another show. do you consider it like an album that you would never get tired of, that you could listen to at any time, pull it out? And I mean, would that be a 10 out of 10 album for you too?
That would be another way to describe it. A desert island disc would be
Desert
another
island
10,
disc.
you know, that I feel are essential. That you were to ask me at a cocktail party and meet me somewhere, you know, what are your favorite albums? These are the ones I'm going to quickly recall. Okay.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff. So, and some of my favorite artists that you've heard me talk about, they haven't had 10s. It's just, I like them for other reasons. They may have 8s and 9s, but those are 10 albums. So for me, this particular artist has, I think, maybe 2 10s. But anyway, 11 studio albums. It's Rory Gallagher. Starts with this, and he ends up with this. And in between, there's just so much great stuff. 2 albums I think are 10s of his. One I don't have somewhere. It's Photo Finish, which I've mentioned before. I love, but also Top Priority. This is such a good album. It is really more hard rock phase. And when you get Rory Gallagher, you're going to get fiery guitar. You're going to get great lyrics. I consider him one of the best lyricists around. You're going to get this fusion of rock and blues and R&B and a little bit of Celtic stuff. And you just really can't go wrong. And there's certain depth to his presentation as a player. And just don't blame me, or just don't take my word for it. Go check him out live on YouTube. And the guy was just unbelievable. So can't go wrong with Rory. And I just think he had matter of fact, I just think from start to finish, he had an 11 album run that was just great, not including his live albums. And there's 3 of them during his lifetime, which were stellar.
Crazy. All right. I had a feeling Rory would pop in, but wasn't sure. Just like the Darkness, but good pick. Excellent pick. All right. Let's throw it over to Jeff. Jeff, you're up again. You got a third one for us?
Oh yeah, I do. And I'd sure like in on that. You know, if we do something with 10 out of 10 albums, I'd sure like in on that. I've got.
I'm going to write that down because this is how this happens.
I think that's a great idea for a show. And you know, actually, I was thinking about it. Some of at least one of the bands that has a 10 out of 10 album for me, either I don't really care as much about the other albums, or don't. They're a band that I like, but it's not, you know, this 10 and all these 9s. It's just this one album just stands out, and like it's perfect. And the other albums are pretty good. So, you know, it's kind of interesting how that works. But all right, so my third pick, and I've got a bunch of honorable mentions that are all obvious to me. But the third pick is, let me get that right. Okay, so Robin Trower, twice removed from Yesterday up through Victims of the Fury, which again, the last one in the 7 is my favorite Robin Trower album, even over Bridge of Sighs, I think. And that's a hard fight. They're both fantastic, but I absolutely love Victims of the Fury. It's just so good. And it's not where I got my introduction to the band. It came along at the right time, and it's so expressive. I mean, Jimmy Dwyer is one of my absolute favorite vocalists. And, you know, Trower's definitely a top like guitarist and all that. But there's something about Jim Dwyer that just made a big difference, I think. So anyway, yeah, there's nothing bad really. It's the third one of 3 where there aren't really any bad. There's not a lot of bad stuff on there. Caravan in Midnight is probably my least favorite in that group. There's not a lot on there that stands out for me, but I could play the whole thing, and you know, I'm not going to get annoyed with it. It's kind of like it sounds a little bit like some of the filler tracks, but Robin Trower filler tracks are pretty good, so I'm going to let it through. You know, and unfortunately, with only 7, you don't get to back it up, which I think is also really good. But anyway, that's my third pick.
And of course, I've screwed up the order because Bill changed positions, and my very simple brain Jeff came up first. So Bill, sorry, I didn't mean to miss you, but you did change spots. So just saying. All right, Bill. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Good third pick. Bill, what's your third pick?
All right, winging it here. I'm gonna go for me what's a pretty easy one. A band I've talked about many times and done multiple episodes on this channel about. That's Blue Öyster Cult. And I could pretty well do the first album through the seventh or the second through the eighth. I'm going the second through the eighth, Tyranny Mutation through Fire of Unknown Origin. Those are the 8 albums, but in this case, the 7 albums, 2 through 8, that feature the original lineup. In particular, Albert Bouchard. I love everything they've done to some degree, but when Albert was there, that's where the real magic happened to me. And I know some people are not big fans of Mirrors. They call it Errors. They're hardcore Blue Öyster Cult fans that have crapped on that album for years. I disagree.
I have no
The
issue
album
with
that has the Vigil on it and I Am the Storm is a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Werman aside, that's another story. But, yeah, this is going by Nick's criteria, the 7 or above. I absolutely give all these 7 or above. Even my least favorite is probably Agents of Fortune, you know, the one with the Reaper on it, oddly enough. But
Wow.
it's a great album, but I think most of their others are better from that era overall.
Cool. Wow.
Looking at the deep cuts. Frankly, I could even go back and start with the Stalk Forest group St. Cecilia album, which came out prior to Blue Öyster Cult's debut, and add that in with the first 6 Blue Öyster Cult albums, and I'd take that run also.
Yeah, it fits right in there.
Yeah. I've been trying forever to make a topic on the channel about that album, but I only get 3 or 4 votes because there's only a few of us hardcore fans. So,
well,
one day we're gonna make it happen.
We could do it in the warehouse. That's probably better venue for it. We could talk about that album if you want. But warehouse talks more about stuff that's more obscure. So, you know,
True.
I'm going to write that down. We could think about it. We could get we get a panel together for that.
Well, I'm betting if you talk to Martin and Matt Thompson, either one of them might be interested.
Well, we can get Martin on it, maybe. Oh, I bet Martin may talk about that. See ya, ladies and gentlemen. That's how we get these topics. I told you, just happens. All right, Bill, that's a good choice. I appreciate that. Yeah. Blue Öyster Cult. Can't argue with that. All right, let's talk to the Parish of Rock. Parish, what's your next choice?
Okay, my next choice is a band that I think's had 2 runs of 7 great albums, or at least good albums. And interestingly, both runs, the starting album has got the same title. And that's Cheap Trick. So I'll take Cheap Trick from their debut all the way through to Next Position, Please. So so that's In Colour, Heaven Tonight, Police, All Shook Up, One on One, which links back to Queen because that's a Roy Thomas Baker album, produced album. And then Next Position, Please, which is the Todd Rundgren album, which if you listen to it as a Cheap Trick album, it doesn't sound very Cheap Trick. But if you listen to it as an album, I just think it's a good album. It's got some good songs, good production. So that's the first run. And then the second run, if you go forward to 1997 and go to the Cheap Trick album that came out on Red Ant, and then run the 7 albums from there: Cheap Trick, Special One, Rockford, the latest, Bang Zoom, Crazy, Hello, Will Right, and In Another World. That's another 7 run. And I think overall, they're probably more consistent than the first 7. Some really good songs on that. I think really like those albums. So that's my third one, Cheap Trick.
All right, cool. I don't know about that first. Well, I don't know that first. Well, the second run, I thought everything was absolutely flawless until All Shook Up, and that's when that came out when I was a kid. That's when we put that on, and all of our friends went, something's off here.
I think it's really good.
Well, I think it holds up better when you look at some of the later stuff in the catalog. You could put that in that great run that they had, but once, I'm telling you, Jack Douglas or Tom Warman for Cheap Trick for me. Anybody else you put in there? Though I think George Martin's results were pretty good because at least the band, at least Cheap Trick still sounds like Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
Once you got to Todd put so much Ovation 12 string on it, it sounded like Tortured Artist Effect.
It doesn't sound like
it's not
doesn't sound
hard.
like Cheap Trick, but I still
No.
think it's a good album.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fine. But one-on-one, you have to admit, is pretty hard, you know? I mean, I don't know. That's a whole other show. You get me on a Cheap Trick tangent, and then we're doomed. And I'm already on a tangent. But I do appreciate it. That first run, though, I don't know. It's brilliant to a certain degree. But again, if you look at like the Doctor and yeah, that run that you just mentioned probably is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, though, anyway, cool. Sorry, I diverted everybody, and I can't help myself. But the Parish started it. He did. It's his fault.
It's my fault.
It's your fault. All right, Nick, what's your next? What's your next pick?
My third one. Well, when we got this topic, I thought it was one of the more OCD topics we've had, like 7 and. Like, holy mackerel, why not 9? Why not 17? But it was actually pretty tough and it was tough because there were certain artists that I thought were going to be easy for me. And then when I started going through, it was tough. One of them, Jeff, just mentioned Trower, and I'm a huge, massive Trower fan. Love Robin Trower, but I could not, in good conscience, rate Caravan to Midnight or In City Dreams a 7. Though I love his canon, and those aren't bad albums. Just I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I like Back It Up, actually. I like Back It Up better than those 2 albums. But I changed my mind at the last minute. I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. When you talk about 7 album runs, one probably thinks these would be 7 albums over maybe like, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years. But I found a band that would have had a 7 album run over 30 some years. And it's all 7 albums. And there's a little forced hint. Local guys, Kicks, and there's the first one. And they've had all 7s, 8s, and 9s up and through the latest one, which is 2014 Rock Your Face Off. This is sort of my entry for the hard rock people and the metal people. And this band has been one of the best live bands I've ever seen, one of the best frontmen I've ever seen. They just recently retired this past summer, went out on top, probably playing to bigger crowds than they've ever played. Saw them at a crowd of probably almost 8,000, 9,000 people. And not a bad one in the bunch of those albums. So, Kicks, you got a bunch of 7s, 8s, and 9s.
Oh, awesome. All right, since we're on 3 and we're still a little early, before we take some honorable mentions, I'm going to go with my pick because no one picked this, and this was an obvious pick because it could be the whole catalog. Could be a different show. I'm going to go with XTC. And I'm not going to do the first 2 albums because I don't think that they fully were realized until they got David Gregory on guitar and they put out Drums and Wires. So I think Drums and Wires, Black Sea, English Settlement, Moomer, The Big Express, Skylarking, Oranges and Lemons. That right there takes you to 7. And then you could keep going, non-such, and then Apple Venus, which I think's their crowning achievement. I think that album's absolutely brilliant. You could go 9 with XTC since we just mentioned that. Why not 9? But anyway, that first 7, however you want to put the 7 together, anything after the first 2 albums, you could mix them all up, and there's not anything that's weak. You might say, well, this album's not as good as that. Of course, but all those records, when those were reviewed, all 5-star records, their whole catalog's like a 5-star album because they're on that type of level. Yeah, brilliant stuff. So my pick, since I'm here and I'm hosting, I'm throwing out XTC. Anybody else have any like honorable mentions or anything you want to bring up before we wrap this one up?
Well, an obvious one. This is one of the ones I tried to avoid because it is so obvious. I mentioned them earlier briefly as Led Zeppelin. I mean, but to me, that if I were going for the 8 album, that is nearly a perfect catalog too. I know there's a lot of people that are not big fans of Presence or In Through the Outdoor. I actually am one of the weirdos that prefers those over the first 2 albums. Maybe part of that is burnout from my younger days listening to those early albums more. But
Probably.
but yeah, if I were going to do Zeppelin, I'd pick Zeppelin 2 through the Outdoor. And yeah, oddly enough, we don't really talk about Zeppelin much on the Contrarians. It seems like I mean, I know they've been talked about more than most bands ever this side of the Beatles, but still, it seems odd for a hard rock channel primarily that we don't really talk about them much.
Maybe it's all been covered. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. I won't talk about the Beatles on my channel. What more can be said? Beatles are my number one, but I'm not going to talk about them because what am I going to add to it that hasn't already been done? And maybe Led Zeppelin's another one of those bands. I don't know.
Maybe it would have to be so sensationalistic, something different. It would just turn into clickbait.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that either, but what am I going to add to the conversation? You know, anything else? Anybody?
Oh, I got a few. Deep Purple from In Rock up through Just the Band, I think. I avoided that because it just seemed like one of the obvious ones. Second Judas Priest up through however far it goes, probably Defenders of Faith or so. I was planning to go with Steppenwolf because Steppenwolf 7, yeah, okay, there's no problem there. Oh God, this ends at slow flux if you start at the beginning. I don't even have slow flux. I can't put this out here. I haven't listened to it. It doesn't work. Probably is decent, but I just couldn't get 7. And I would have liked to have put George Benson in his earlier soul jazz because I absolutely fucking love soul jazz. And George Benson was really, really good at it. And every Benson album I've heard, there's good stuff on it. But I haven't been able to track them all down. I don't probably have 7 contiguous George Benson albums. But that would have been, if I had them, that probably would have been one of my picks. But that's a few. I'm sure you could get it with Motorhead. I'm pretty sure that as long as there's 7 albums on one side or the other with KFD, Wasp would count. Because KFD is just absolutely not. There aren't too many albums I hate more than that. For a band that I love. So that's a handful.
The other one that popped into my head, I had to look them up. Initially, I thought, well, what about Aerosmith? They had to have a 7-album run that was, no, they don't qualify. They don't make it. But REM does. Murmur, Reckoning, Fables of the Reconstruction, Life's Rich Pageant, Document, Green, Up to Out of Time. I love it all. I
think they dropped a bit with Green.
I don't.
If I thought of REM, I might have gone with it.
I mean, people don't really care much about REM anymore, I don't think, but you could still go. Automatic for the People was brilliant. Monster, I don't know. They sold an awful lot of those and they all ended up in the dollar bin. But I would say all the way up to Automatic for the People, and that, I mean, Green, I think Green's good. That was a big record.
It was successful.
So I don't know, but could there be a drop in quality when they went to Warner Brothers? Maybe, but Out of Time I think is great. I don't know. I like it. So I thought I'd mention it. So what time is it? I got anybody else have any before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay.
So one's actually been mentioned, kind of. So one of my honorable mentions is Sweet, starting with Desolation Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the UK version, but for you guys, it's probably the US version. And then up through Give Us a Wink, off the record, Level Headed. And then even after Brian Connolly left, Cut Above the Rest, Water's Edge, and Identity Crisis, I think are really good as well. So there's definitely 7 albums there. And those last 3, if nobody's really listened to them, they're definitely worth giving a listen to. They're a bit different because the vocals are different, but they're still, I think, got some really good songs on there. And they're kind of almost going AOR on a couple of those albums, which is quite interesting. So Sweet is one of them.
So would you go, I think one of the best records, of course, we know in the USA, okay, you may know this, you might not, but Sweet Fanny Adams and Desolation Boulevard in the United States were combined
They were,
to
yeah.
make Desolation Boulevard. But Sweet Fanny Adams, I don't think you mentioned that. Did you mention
No,
that
I
one?
didn't.
That is
No, I didn't. And
brilliant.
the reason I mean, I should have done really, but the reason I didn't was because I wanted to talk about those last three. Because
Gotcha.
most people don't think of the last three. But you're right, you could have an 8 run. You could
You could
have
go
an 8 run
8.
start. Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to give it a pass because I think you have to put Sweet Fanny Adams in there.
Yeah,
But,
I'd
you know,
agree with that.
And you know what? I'm going to go out on a ledge. I don't think Martin likes these very much, but like the first, you know, funny how sweet Coco can be, you know, he doesn't like all that bubble gum. But, you know, if you look at it, there was some great stuff on those records.
They're fun albums. I just don't think I could class them as classics.
No, not as an album, but I mean, some of those 45s, Parrish.
Yeah. Oh,
Come on,
definitely.
you know, there was some good 45. I absolutely love Sweet. Love it.
Next one was John Mellencamp, starting with American Fall through Aha, Scarecrow, Lonesome Jubilee, Big Daddy, Whenever We Wanted, up to Human Will. So those last three again, probably, I don't know. I don't think they're as big as albums as the first 4, but I think all 7 of those are really good.
Yep.
In fact, I could probably even go further beyond that, but certainly those 7 I think are really good. And then the last one I had, which is a more modern band, is Alter Bridge. So they've released 7 albums, and I think all of those 7 are really good. From the first one in 2004 up into the latest in 2022. So for something slightly more modern, I'd go with Alter Bridge.
All right, good choice. All right, I think I'm good. Anybody? What time is it? Yeah, I probably should wrap it up. You good, Nick? You got any?
Of course, I'll just yell them out.
All right, go
Nazareth.
ahead, go. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Nazareth from Razamanaz through Show No Mercy. No one mentioned UFO, Phenomenon through Mechanics or Making Contact. And I'll give you a third one, which will bend the rules. I think Sensational Alex Harvey Band from Framed up through Rock Drill. I would not include Foreplay as a Alex Harvey album. I am a detractor. It doesn't include Alex, but I am a fan of Rock Drill and all those albums. There's 7. They're fantastic. So I'll give you those 3. And a few that missed it for me, I thought it'd be easy. Jack Bruce misses it, even though I love that guy. And I thought a band like Blackfoot would have 7. No, I have about 6 or so.
Ugh.
And even I love Social Distortion. No, they don't make it either. They have about 5.
What about Kiss? You got a Kiss hat on.
2. No, it's Kicks, but Kiss is
Oh,
too
damn it!
obvious.
I thought it was Kiss.
We're the Contrarians. I don't want to go with Kiss. I don't want to go with those.
I've got a Kiss t-shirt on.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. Did they have a 7-album run? I'm just throwing it out.
If
Probably.
you like Dynasty,
What's that?
if you like Dynasty, they had a 7-album run.
Okay. Well, I think that was probably the end. I could include that. Big record. People liked it. I don't know. I have no problem with Dynasty.
Mata Hoople, 7.
Martha Hoople. What about
They saved the best for last.
thinking.
Hoople. What?
no, I'm looking.
Grand Funk.
Oh, I don't know about Grand Funk.
I just want to see your reaction.
I can still get me started on Grand Funk. All right, gentlemen, I think we're going to wrap this dog up. I want to thank Jeff, the Parish, Bill, and Nick for joining in the discussion tonight. It was a lot of fun. A little bit loose, but I like it loose. Let's just talk about music, everybody. If you like to be on these panels, you can be on these too. We'd love to have you. We also have a Patreon you can join. There's constant things being thrown out there. We also have a Ko-fi, buy us a cup or a pint. We like that. And we do like money. We love money. We love donations. I don't think we've had any lately. I like donations, especially during the live show on Wednesday. But we just do this because we want to talk music and we're just trying to turn you on to stuff. That's all we're doing. Take what you can from us and learn and run with it. And like I said, I hope tonight you got something out of it and something you can go home and check out. So on behalf of the Contrarians, we will see you. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this. We'll see you on the next one and have a good week. See ya.